Good morning, metalheads of the internet, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Metal Meltdown. Today we are talking about the latest studio album from Architects entitled The Sky, the Earth, and All Between. This is the 11th full-length studio album from this English metalcore crew. They've been kicking around for roughly 20 years or so by now, and in that time have become an integral force and component within the modern mainstream metalcore scene, and also one of the most influential bands within that modern mainstream metalcore scene. There's a lot that's happening within metalcore right now that you can almost directly trace back to the earliest works and recordings from Architects. Like if you love choppy, complex riffage and rhythmic breakdowns and different time signatures and soaring melodies and a lot of the basic song structures and hooks and flows that we hear in metalcore today, you have Architects to thank for that. Well, in part, at least. There were other bands, to be fair, but we're not here to talk about other bands. We're here to talk about Architects. And hey, speaking of, Architects, what's going on? Are you okay? Everything good in the hood? I ask because if I didn't know any better from listening to this album, I would assume that you guys were going through some kind of identity crisis. I would assume that you guys were maybe a little bit confused as to where you were in the world, as to where Architects is in the world, as to what Architects is and can be. Because, sounds kind of a mess. It's not horrible before y'all jump on me, but there are problems. On one hand, it's nice to see Architects bring in heavier riffs and influences back into the sound after years of uninspired, underwhelming radio pop, arena rock metal schlock, criminally underutilizing Josh Middleton and his talents to the point where I could have assumed that he was being ignored by the band or just outright suffocated. But on the other hand, I don't really get the feeling that this heavier side of Architects returning was done because it was something Architects genuinely wanted to do. A big component of this record, lyrically, is Architects dealing with criticism, processing criticism, and kind of responding to people who didn't like the last couple of records. As a result, I can't help but get the feeling that a lot of the heavier stuff on this record was made, again, not out of desire for heavier stuff to be made, but rather in response to that criticism. And this belief of mine, this take that I have about this Architects album, I feel is reinforced by the fact that so much of what happens on this album exists to make the choruses bigger. And there's a lot of stuff happening within the build-up to those choruses, to those hooks and those melodies. Electronics, keyboards, synthesizers, sound effects, and samples, and like really heavy metalcore, deathcore breakdowns, and jagged riffs, and weird vocal spats. The upside to that, though, is that it is very eclectic, and it did catch me off guard a couple of times. Genuinely, honestly. And going back to those choruses and melodies and hooks and such, Sam Carter, to his credit, honestly sounds really good on this album. Like, this is the best vocally I think he has sounded in at least a decade. Long story short, the album isn't horrible, but it is all over the place. And that is a byproduct of Architects, from my perspective, not really knowing who they want to be and caving into pressure from fans and critics. We do start off fairly strong with the opening number, Elegy. I like the simple build-up here. I like how massive and dynamic Sam's voice is here. I like some of the simple electronics and how it has this kind of cinematic scale. And I like how that transitions into some pretty blistering, scorching, heavy, like, metalcore riffage, like very early 2000s metalcore vibes, but like some more twisted, complex, nuanced riffage thrown in here and there, a lot of aggression, a lot of energy, kind of feels like a mix of like early Bring Me the Horizon, early Protest the Hero, and also obviously classic Architects. I will say that the final minute of this song, comprised of generic, pounding, ham-fisted breakdowns and a very moody, quiet, important sounding outro, does feel a little bit tacked on. We're not quite sticking the landing here, but hey, at least we're still starting fairly strong, alright? I think the album is at its best when it's at its most shocking. Brain Dead, for instance, caught me off guard with its blend of like electronic mayhem and punk fury and rage. The energy and versatility on display is just fucking great. I mean, you've got these sprawls of frantic, hardcore, crossover, 90s metalcore riffage. You've got these genuinely pretty brutal, explosive bursts all the way through. You've got some decent melodies cutting through. These really kind of glitchy sections with weird drum and bass and weird sounds, and it's very in your face and very aggressive, and it all kind of brings to mind horror and soul glow joining forces, but trying to go into a modern metalcore kind of direction. The closing number, Chandelier, has some pretty neat ideas as well. It brings in influence from EDM and dubstep, especially in the build-up to the chorus, while still trying to be a more emotive and epic kind of album closer with strings and moody harmonized vocals. By no means an amazing cut, but I would argue one of the more successful fusions of EDM, dubstep, and metal that I've seen maybe ever. Certainly miles ahead of the Path of Totality from Korn, that's for fucking sure. And honestly, I'm really loving Judgment Day. It's my favorite cut on the album. I'm loving the techno-influenced electronics and beats and dynamics. I'm loving that really chunky fucking riffage. I'm loving the more moody, quiet, sultry feminine vocals of Amira Elfke, and I like how she harmonizes with Sam Carter. I like the vocal chemistry that they have. It's heavy and slick and cool as hell. We're channeling Rammstein and I Disagree era poppy, and even the aura of something like We Appreciate Power from Grimes. Unfortunately, though, while these songs manage to succeed and thrive despite Architect's arguable identity crisis, other songs fall pretty flat. Songs like Evil Eyes, Broken Mirror, and Curse are painfully bland and formulaic, some of the most full-blown, unremarkable, and totally forgettable pop metal duds I think I've heard in a long time, and Architect's struggle to embrace the new and the old in a way that feels authentic and genuine is on full display with something like Seeing Red. A track that tries so hard, to be so brutal and tough and edgy that once bigger, brighter, more melodic elements are brought in, it just looks and sounds fucking goofy. Whiplash feels very confused as well in between segments of fairly straightforward, one-dimensional modern metalcore. You have sections of aggressive underground hip-hop style stuff in the vein of Ghostmane or reminiscent of something I might have heard off the last Paleface Swiss record, and also in its final moments it closes on a sample of Gordon Ramsay screaming and ranting, calling people donkeys. I don't know what the intention here was this, but it just sounds silly. You can't sample one of the most famous and memeable human beings on this planet and then expect me to take that seriously. You just can't. And for seemingly no reason whatsoever, Everything Ends feels the need to go into very light, safe, fluffy, empty, millennial pop, reminiscent of One More Light from Linkin Park. Architect's love of Linkin Park has been well documented many a time over the years, and I've been fine with it, but I'm sorry, this shit stinks. This album really is all over the place, man, and it's clear that this method of just kind of throwing shit at the wall and seeing what sticks and trying to be new and trying to embrace the old simultaneously, it just isn't working for Architects, not consistently at least. If I were to give this a score just based on Judgment Day and Brain Dead, honestly, we could be looking at a 4 to 5. But if I were to give this a score just based on Everything Ends and Whiplash, we're closer to a 1. And then there's a bunch of stuff that just kind of falls near the middle, where I'm 3 to 5, 2 to 5. So maybe with that in mind, we're going right in the middle with a 2.5 out of 5. I think for the most part, this will be a popular record, especially amongst longtime fans of Architects. I can see this being hailed as a return to form for the band, but personally, this to me just looks like Architects don't really know who they want to be, and they're caving into pressure while also trying to do all these other things, and it makes for a confused experience with some bright spots, but also some very dim, stupid spots. I don't think Architects would be looking to me for advice, but if somehow they were, I would say take some time to sit down and really think about what you want to be. Really take some time to focus up and figure out what Architects needs to be, and then commit to that fully. Don't try to do 10 things at once, and stop worrying about what fans and critics are saying. Just be you. Unconditionally. And that is it for the Metal Meltdown. I am not an expert, nor do I claim to be. So what do you think? Do you like this record? Do you not like this record? And what do you want to hear from me next? And thank you for watching. Make sure you press subscribe right here so you get updates on the Metal Meltdown fucking immediately. Join us on Discord, boom, other videos here. And as always, you have yourself a fantastic fucking day.